the racing off, and what happened? The wind decided not to well, it did turn up to start with, and then it disappeared completely towards the end. But all of that aside, we've still got plenty of action under our belt to mull over today. And the first question's come in. I'm not actually sure who it's from, I'm afraid, but they've asked, what technical advancements would the sailors like to see on the F50s for next year, or will the boats stay the same? We'll start, I think, Jodie and Shirley, you're probably most plugged into this, aren't you?
Well, I think the sailors want it and they're going to get it. I mean, ideally, we can sail in, 2 knots of winds, and we can sail in 40 knots of wind, and that's exactly what we're going to be able to do next season. It'll be a modular wing, so they'll have massive amount of power. When there's hardly any wind, they'll have sort of average, and they'll have a tiny little wing, a sort of Lego effect of wing sailing, and it's going to be good actually, because one thing you can't rely on is the weather, and we saw that today. And but it will be more choices, Jodie. They'll have to decide before they go out, what they're going to use. And we saw today, didn't we? We were expecting all that wind, and it didn't materialise. So yeah, more choices isn't always a good thing.
I think after today's last race, I think they want a massive fan on the back of their boat to actually move them through the water, because that was painful. But anyway, yeah, the new boats are going to look really cool. Like Shirley said, we're going to have the new wing configuration. They may do a little bit of tweaking on the rudders and some systems on the board. A lot more controllable wings as well. So, season 2, it's only going to be bigger and better, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the sailors get better and better at sailing the boats, they want to tweak it more fine-tuning, and we're going to see that in the new wings. I think there's like 6 controls on the twist, whereas I think there's 3 currently. So, they want to be able to fine-tune it more and more, and we're going to see that for next season.
Yeah, because there aren't enough minute controls on these boats already that they have to get through. The one thing that frightens me with that, Matt Jean-Baptiste, is that you've got a 29-metre high wing up. What happens when the opposite of today happens? You go out in light airs and it gets up and you've got 29-metre wing up.
You've got a bit on, is what happens. It's an interesting one. I mean, we are slaves to the conditions in the sport. Yeah, we could get caught out. But it's a brilliant thing. I think, being able to extend the range of these boats is something we all want to see. And it also opens up other venues that you might not go to because, they're particularly windy or light venues. And there's other wonderful places in the world that we want to go to. So,
Jean-Baptiste, from what you saw today, is there anything that you think the F50s would really benefit from?
I think yes, because it opened the range of the sailing, so it's always good. So maybe today they can still fly until the end. So.
There's an interesting point, actually, that you could bump up the surface area of the foils as well, not just the wing. That might be coming later on in seasons further down the track. At the moment, I think it's more a case of a backlog in terms of actually being able to build everything in time, because these are such precision pieces of kit. Now, the next questions come in, and a lot of the more observant spectators among you have been asking what the little screens are in the bottom of the wing, exactly what that does. Do you know, Jean-Baptiste?
To be honest, I'm not sure, but probably about the sail, the wings.
OK, I know that Matt Cornwell knows what's going on there.
Well, we had them in the Cup last time. Everyone had them slightly differently then, but it's data. It's all sorts of data. It's they've actually got a race software that they use as well, and which helps you get around the course, but it's particularly useful in the start. It's data that was developed by Artemis in the last Cup, and all the teams are using here, and that's often, I think, where you see the Japanese team getting good starts, because Nathan Outridge helped develop that data. But yes, they're getting fed a lot of information, and that screen's a big part of it.
How vital is it to the sailors to be able to read that and use it, Shirley?
Well, Ed, it's vital for them, but also vital for us. And actually now, if viewers had been watching the racing, they'll see we get a lot of the information they have on that screen, we get on ours. So there'll be, rake and pitch and true wind speed and VMG and all of that is we get exactly the same data as they're getting. But as Matt said, that software which helps them navigate around the course, helps them with time and distance, is absolutely invaluable. Although today it wasn't a massive help, and we saw that in the starts. I mean, particularly from like Nathan, he's always locked on. He hits that start line, on the B of bang, but not today. Without that that additional support of the software, it's a lot harder to be that accurate.
They could have had a movie on it today. I don't think it would have mattered, but
Yeah.
it does show. One of the real critical things is, and you hear the sailors all the time talking about time to boundary, time to distance, all that sort of stuff. And it's up in the front part of the screen that shows, how far it is from a boundary, how far in time they've got, so it'll count down 20 seconds, 19 seconds, so then they can start making their decisions on what manoeuvre they're about to do. So, that's really, really cool sort of information. And Nathan Outridge and the Japanese didn't have that in the final in San Francisco. And you were saying, they're flying blind. They didn't know where the boundaries were and all that. So, any team that loses.
Jodie just said they could have had a movie on it today and it wouldn't have made any difference. I wonder what movie you would have on your screen today. Top Gun, maybe.
Sleepless in Seattle, maybe? Oh, The French Connection. That was made in Marseille. Bit of classic Gene Hackman. Right, third question for today. A couple of people have asked what the addition of the 7th team means to the fleet for SailGP. Matt, what do you think it's going to do?
Well, there's a lot of strong sailing nations out there that aren't represented here, and it's going to be great to get one of those in here. So, I mean, I can't wait to find out who it is. Well, I've heard rumours, and there's a few sort of names up there. There's a queue of teams.
Can I just advise you, contractually, I wouldn't say anything here if you ever want to work on SailGP again.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm the last to know. Don't worry about me. Even if I told you, I'm probably wrong. But there's a queue of people wanting to get involved, and they just can't knock the boats out fast enough. So it's whoever's got in there first. Yeah, looking forward to seeing that is.
OK, we can see the boat being built here. This is in Warkworth, just north of Auckland, where Core Builders have got 90 people working around the clock, not just to get these boats ready, but also to get the new modular wings ready. Jean-Baptiste, I think it's worth saying that probably a year ago, the idea of putting 6 boats out on the water together was quite surprising to a lot of people, having only had 2 before.
Especially those boats, because they are really fast, and one more boat on the place could be even more dangerous. I mean, there's one more point also tactically, so the fight will be better.
Most definitely. Shirley, do you think there's room on the start line for another boat?
I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but Jean-Baptiste is absolutely right. I mean, when we first saw these boats in the America's Cup in Bermuda, they just raced 2 boats at one time, and we thought it was dangerous. It was way too out there. And now we've kind of got used to seeing them all together. But you're absolutely right, and particularly as it gets windier or when the venue gets smaller, there's going to be a lot more action. But the ambition for the circuit is to have 10 venues, 10 boats, and imagine that. It's going to be quite something.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. Another team, I can give you exclusive, it's got a red bow. We know that. So that's all.
Who's your money on it? Who's it going to be?
Hold on a second. How do you know that, Jodie?
Because it was on the screen. We've seen it on the screen. It's got a red bow. There's 168 countries in the world that have red in their flags, because I know my flags.
I'm pumping for Wales. I think it's going to be Welsh.
OK, yeah, that's worth thinking about, actually. I might go and get my sailing almanac out and start looking for red. OK, 4th question. We've got an extra one in for us today. And a couple of people have asked... Hold on 2 seconds. I've lost that question. What controls are powered by the batteries and what controls are powered by the grinders? You've spent a bit of time on these boats, Matt?
Yes, it was very different for us. We had to do everything, and these guys are lucky they got batteries. But actually, they're having to work really hard, and what they're doing, the grinders are controlling the wing. They're winging in and out. They're turning the wing winch. It's got a rope on it, pulls that wing in. You can see the guys here, and they're looking at. You can see the aft grinder there. He's looking at the wing the whole time. And actually, you're not just responding to the calls of the trimmer, you're having to preempt it too. And they're just going non-stop. Down the reach, you've got to just keep the winch turning, and then the wing trimmer decides when he's going to use it. So sometimes he's actually, you can see him there, he was slipping it. He was actually easing the rope, and the guys are still winding. That happens quite a lot on the reach.
OK, in terms of the battery power, Shirley, Jodie, you guys have been talking about this a lot during the racing, especially yesterday when we had those very windy conditions. They're powering the pumps, I'm guessing, but they're overheating massively.
Well, I think firstly, I'd like to add about the grinders. We don't talk about them a lot, but when you talk to the teams, they're absolutely vital. That they anticipate what's going to what's going to happen and how much power is going to be required. And you know, a good grinder, they call it, you know, they snatch it, they get the power at the right time, which allows you to do whatever you want with the wing. So they're absolutely invaluable. In terms of the pumps and the batteries, well, they control everything else. So all the movements on the foils, they control the twist and the camber of the wing. And the more variable the conditions, the more they're adjusting, they're changing mode all the time. And so that was why yesterday all of them had the pumps in the red. You know, they were really hot, over 80 degrees. And I think it's at over 80 or 85 degrees, they go into kind of slow mode. And we heard them say that yesterday. And can you imagine, you're trying to do something and it's just happening at half speed. It must be so frustrating.
And one thing that is, like to touch on what Shirley just said, on the reaches and the works, and like when the wing trim is like we were talking about yesterday with the twist, they've got a little toggle switch and they're just on and off and on and off and on and off. And every time they do that, the pump's working and the battery's working. So, you know, there's so much, you know, they've got the differentials for the rudders have to work. Everything on the boat is working off pumps and batteries. So when we got extreme conditions like yesterday, not so much in today's race, the pumps were probably frozen cold after today's race. But, you know, yesterday's race, the pumps would have been working full noise, that's for sure.
Okay, Jean-Baptiste, we did see Jodie and Shirley were calling it out quite a bit during the racing. The grinders' heart rates were nearly in the 200s at times.
Yeah, that was really high, and I can imagine because I had a few times on the boat for the cup. I was trying to jump on it, and it was already too hard for me to grind.
Okay, thank you all for joining us for the Facebook fan forum here. Please keep sending your questions in. We really enjoy answering them. Jodie, Shirley, thank you so much for the commentary. Jean-Baptiste, Matt, thank you very much for today.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you tomorrow when SailGP comes to its finale. It is the grand final here in Marseille, and tomorrow we have the championship final race between Japan and Australia. You do not want to miss that.